Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Spring 2022 Change for Climate Lunchbox series. Today's session is going to focus on being prepared for emergencies, such as those that can come with extreme weather events. My name is Heather Wheelaker, and I'm here with my colleague Karen Young. Both of us work in the Economic and Environmental Sustainability branch with the city. We're joined today by an emergency management professional from the University of Alberta, Adam Conway, who I will introduce shortly. Just a note, this session will be recorded and we are only recording the speaking and the presentation slides. To begin, the City of Edmonton acknowledges the traditional land on which we reside. We're in Treaty 6 territory. We thank the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory for centuries, such as the Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, and Blackfoot. We also acknowledge this as the Métis homeland and the home of one of the largest communities of Inuit south of the 60th parallel. It is a welcoming place for all people who come from around the world to share Edmonton as a home. Together, we call upon all of our collective honored traditions and spirits to work in building a great city for today and for future generations. So just before we get underway, we're going to begin with a quick poll question if you care to respond, and that will appear on your screen shortly. So essentially, if an extreme weather event were to strike, how prepared are you to live for, let's say, 72 hours without services? Say without heat, power, water? Are you not prepared at all? Somewhat prepared, very prepared, or you're so prepared you could even help your neighbors survive too? So just as you're responding to that poll, I'm sure that you've already made the connection between being prepared for emergencies and our changing climate. Just a very quick story. Only a couple of weeks ago, my 87-year-old mom on the east coast of Canada, she lost power for 3 full days. And she was a lucky one. Somewhere it went without power for 4 days. And when the power goes, the heat goes too. There were 80 to 110 kilometer-an-hour winds that toppled trees that were heavy with a thick coating of ice, and the trees toppled onto ice-coated power lines. Temperatures plummeted to minus 16 degrees Celsius, and the house was cold, but she was fully prepared. And to say that could never, ever happen in Edmonton, well, as the climate changes, it might be best to be like my mom and be prepared for anything. So looking at your poll responses, we sort of veer into the not prepared at all to somewhat prepared. And so hopefully this session will convince you that we need to move into the very prepared portion. And if you're prepared enough to help your neighbors too, that would be excellent. So it is now my pleasure to introduce today's presenter, Adam Conway. Adam is Manager of Emergency Management at the University of Alberta, and Adam's going to share his experiences and his knowledge about preparing for emergencies. Preparing so that they don't actually become an emergency. And while Adam is presenting, please think about how prepared you are and how you could be better prepared. Adam, thank you so much for joining us today. You can share your screen.
Awesome, thank you kindly. I'm just gonna jump over here. And there we go. All right, thank you so much for attending today. This is one of my favorite things in the whole world to do, is to get to talk to people about getting themselves prepared. When in doubt, you can always go to getprepared.ca, which is the federal government's website on preparedness, and has a trove of information, and it's just an excellent resource. So today we're going to talk about preparing for severe weather, or as I like to call it, should I stay or should I go now? Alberta has some advantages when it comes to our emergency preparedness, and the biggest one for today's session is that we really only have 2 kinds of emergencies. We have the kind where you have to run away, and we have the kind where you have to stay where you are. our friends and family who live in earthquake areas have a more complicated approach, but I like to say really in Alberta, there's really just two emergencies, the kind that traps you in your house or the kind that forces you to leave your house. So I'm going to start today, and I'm really going to focus on the essentials of preparedness. And I will talk a little bit about response as well, but I wanted to focus on risk reduction, on reducing emergencies and disasters from severe weather. An emergency and a disaster is an event that exceeds our capacity to manage it. And so if we can increase our capacity, then we can reduce the occurrence of disasters. So I'm going to run through reduction by kind of by feature, by phenomenon, and then I'll talk about response by phenomenon, and I'll talk about some general tasks at the end. I am going to give you homework. This is everything everything I'm going to talk about today. I would like you to do. Take notes, write it down, because this is, as Heather has talked about, this is something with climate change that we need to be a little bit more energetic about. So winter storms, of course, make up about 80% of our weather, it seems like. They are severe cold, severe wind, severe snow, combination of all of the above. So to be prepared for those, the things you need to do are maintain your furnace and hot water tank so that they are as resilient as possible. Maintain your winter clothing. Make sure that you have good, decent winter clothing. Keep track of who is who on your block. Think about what neighbors have capacity, what neighbors have vulnerability that could be important in the event of a winter storm. Keep a good stock of blankets. If you have spare blankets, great. Keep those, even if they take up a little bit of your storage space. In your house, maintain 3 days of water, medications, food, and pet food. Make 3 days of food the base level. In the event of an emergency across Canada, the planning assumption is that you could be on your own for up to 3 days. And so maintaining that 3 days of food and water is really important. They may not be the most exciting food, but they will still be essential. So canned foods are very good. Foods that you don't require a lot of heat to prepare are really good, or foods that you can eat dry are really good. I want you to keep a little stockpile of that stuff at work as well. One of the systems that can be impacted by a winter storm is our transportation system. And so you could end up not being able to get home for a few hours at the end of the day. So I do want you to keep that stock in your work and in your vehicle. You could end up trapped in your vehicle by an accident. When I came to work this morning, the high-level bridge was a little occluded because somebody had driven the wrong way across it. And so in that situation, you can suddenly end up stuck in your car for a prolonged period of time. And I want you to have food and water in your car. The other critical supply to have is, of course, food or flashlights and batteries. When the winter here, it's dark a whole lot of the time. And so you'll have a higher need for your own independent light source at home. Floods. Floods in Alberta are one of our most serious disasters, one of our most expensive disasters. And so it really does merit the time to prepare for them adequately. I want you to keep your eaves troughs and your downspouts clean and clear. With climate change, we're going to see changes in our precipitation patterns, and being able to manage that water is going to be really important. Check your sump pumps and your hoses. Make sure those are clear and functioning properly. Keep your window wells clean and your storm drains clean. EPCOR maintains a map of all of their storm catch basins. You probably have 3 or 4 of them on your block with the manhole cover on top of them. Keep those clear. You can go down with a shovel or a scraper or a rake and clean away the leaves, clean away the debris from those so that the water on your block has a place to go. Over the last couple of weeks, you have seen streets in Edmonton where those catch basins are cleared and there's no water, and you have seen streets where they're not, and where the water has built up and it's usually blocking a sidewalk and then flooding onto lawns from there. EPCOR has tens of thousands of these basins. They do not have enough people to run around and keep them all clear all the time. So nothing stops you from going down with your little scraper or your shovel and just keeping those clear, especially in the fall when the leaves are coming off the trees and they're starting to block up those drains. Clear those away in the fall so that they work in the thaw in February. Learn to shut off, or learn how to shut off your power, water, and your gas. In flooding, the municipality may direct you to turn off your water to keep water from flowing back. They may direct you to turn off your power. They may direct you to turn off your gas, and learn how to do that. Getprepared.ca can teach you. I would say though, do not shut those things off until the municipality tells you to, but learn in advance how to do them. Inside your house, to prepare for floods, and this is where I get crosswise of some of our developers and home builders. In your basement, where the water is going to go, I want you to keep important and dangerous things off the floor. So power supplies for your electronics, your important boxes full of archival papers, lift those things up, keep them 3 or 4 inches off the floor. I want you to keep a bottle of bleach in your house at all times, because when water gets into your house, the growth of mold is going to be a principal concern. And just mixing bleach into that flood water is going to keep down the chance of mold in your house. Check your home insurance and know what you are covered for and what you are not covered for. Your home insurance may also be able to give you advice on changes to make to your house, either backflow valves or other kinds of flood protection. Get more rain barrels. One of the things I hear a lot as we talk about climate resiliency is, when in doubt, more rain barrels to store that water from those abnormal precipitation patterns. The last step, and I said in the slideshow here that there's more, but it's expensive. There are ways to build a flood smart house, particularly in your basement, around your drywall choices, your flooring choices, your decorating choices. Those can be big changes, and I wouldn't want anybody to go home and rip all the carpet out of their basement. But I would say that if you're building a house, don't put carpet in your basement. That's what area rugs are for. Area rugs are nice because you can throw them out after the flood. That's what I mean there. Summer storms. So floods occur in the summer, but what's more common in the summer is thunderstorms, severe winds, things like that. So all of the things I said above about flooding, I want you to add a couple of steps to prepare for severe windstorms, whether that's tornadoes or derechos or thunderstorm winds. I want you to keep a yard with minimal debris. We have had fatalities in Alberta from wind-blown debris from thunderstorms. And so I want you to keep a yard where not a lot of things can blow around. I want you to check your trees for damage. And if you have trees that are damaged by severe winds or by cold or by age, I want you to mitigate that. Call an arborist, get that tree taken care of or out. And I want you to have a place where you can go for shelter from severe winds. And that usually means an interior room or a low room below ground level. It's a critical concern for Albertans when we're engaged in our outdoor activities. We're going camping, we're going golfing, we're quadding. I want you to, in those times when storms are likely, I want you to think about where you're going to go if the wind kicks up. Remembering from the Pine Lake tornado, it hit a campground. That campground was predominantly full of RVs, which are very light and they disintegrate in strong winds. So I want you to think about, where's the cement bathroom? Where's the concrete picnic shelter that I can go and shelter in and protect myself from the debris? We've had some pretty significant wildfires in Alberta over the last little bit. Slave Lake and Fort McMurray And of course, fire is part of prairie living. Climate change will alter those fire behaviors, and they will alter our fire season. So everything I'm going to tell you about here applies inside the city. Everything I'm going to tell you here applies at the cabin or at the lake lot as well. First of all, keep the area around your house free of fuels. If you live in a forest, make sure that there's a buffer around your house that is distant from the trees. Keep leaves and dead sticks and deadfall and all that stuff away from the house, and clean under your stairs, clean under your porches, get that stuff out of there. Some people after a fire will remark on, this house burned, but the house next to it didn't. How does that happen? And a lot of it has to do with how much fuel is available to the fire on that property. So if you've got eavesdrops full of leaves and sticks on the roof and wind-blown leaves up against the side of the house, then you are at higher risk of fire damage. If you've kept the shrubbery back, if you've kept the property clean and clear, then your risk of fire is much reduced. With fire, of course, comes smoke. And the good news is we're all getting really used to wearing our masks around. So hang on to some of those. A fire in British Columbia or a fire in Northern Alberta can bring smoke into Edmonton. So those masks, I think, are going to be a useful thing to hang on to. In my bullet here says, in crossover conditions, be extremely fire safe. What does that mean? Okay, crossover conditions. You're going to hear this term during fire season. And crossover conditions are whenever the temperature exceeds the humidity. So if it is 22 degrees and the humidity is 15%, that is called crossover conditions. And what that means is that it is bone dry out there and everything is susceptible to catching fire. What I mean by extremely fire safe is cigarettes, hot exhaust from vehicles, campfires, burn barrels, fireworks. No, you're not setting off fireworks in the city of Edmonton, but another example, just all of those behaviors. Think about basically that you are living in tinder. You are living in tinder and kindling at that point. So whenever you see crossover conditions, I need you to be extremely safe about how you are acting around anything heat generating. Prepare an evacuation route and a kit. So always know how you will get out of your property if you're required to evacuate by a wildfire, and have a kit that you can grab and go at a moment's notice. I'll talk a little bit more about the kit contents in a second. In areas where we have limited roads, if you're living rural or you have a rural property, or you're down in a river valley that has relatively few roads in and out of it, you may need to evacuate early. You may need to go right away because it may be impossible for you to go by the time it gets to be too late. Having a kit prepared in advance takes a lot of the stress off you in that moment. And in some settings, be prepared to fight fire. And this is those settings where you are either first on scene or the fire department is a long way away. You may need to fight a wildfire. Obviously, if it is not safe, do not do it. If you cannot approach the fire safely from behind, do not do this. But if you are operating a commercial operation, or you're out at a camp, or you're camping in our northern boreal forest area, you may consider bringing with you shovel, knowing where you can get sand or dirt if somebody's campfire gets out from them. And in some cases, if you're operating a commercial operation in those areas, the law will dictate what you have to have on hand for fighting wildfires. That information is all available from the provincial government as they take care of the forest management area there. And in general, reducing the risk from everything. First thing I want you to do is make a home kit. Make a kit that will allow you to stay in your house with the doors closed and the windows closed for 72 hours. And so that is water to drink, water to clean, water to flush the toilets with. And roughly speaking, it's between 6 and 8 liters of water per person per day for 3 days. So it can end up being quite a lot of water. If you have a big hot water tank, you have the water in there. Careful, it's hot, but you have it. If you've gone tankless, then I need you to store some water. And you can store water for quite a long time as long as you keep it in the dark. So get some water bottles, put them in the cold store, and change those over every year. But you can keep for up to a year if you keep them in the dark. Pet food, of course, do not forget you need 3 days worth of pet food. You need food for you, and that's some of the boring food, and throw some junk food in there as well. Absolutely. You need games, you need cards, you need board games, you need something to do. Again, bleach, particularly if you need to clean anything, you need to clean out the toilet, those kinds of things. Having some bleach around as a disinfectant, very important. Blankets to keep warm, candy and junk food, as I said earlier, flashlights and batteries, and printed copies of your documents. When I was a wee lad, of course, there was a piece of paper beside the phone that had every phone number we ever needed on it. And usually now, of course, we are keeping those on our devices. But if the power goes out and you can't turn your phone on to get Auntie Muriel's phone number anymore, you're going to wish you had printed those off. So printed copies of your documents. I also need you to make a kit to run away from your house. And so put this in a backpack or put it in a wagon so that it's available to you. And it should have a change of clothes, a couple of changes of clothes anyway, for everybody in your family. Pet carriers for your cats or dogs or your hamster, etc. Your insurance documents, because having those documents with you could mean the difference between staying in a hotel or sleeping on the floor of the gymnasium. The choice is yours. The solution is usually your insurance documents. Again, bring some games, bring a deck of cards, contact information for not only your family or friends in the local area, but friends or family in another province, so that you can have a place that you can phone and give information to and get information from. Food and pet food. Of course, when you get to the local gymnasium, they may well have food for you. They will not have food for your pets. So make sure that you've got some pet food in your evacuation kit. Water to drink, and soap and toiletries. Please make sure you bring soap and toiletries to the reception center. It's no good in there after 24 hours if nobody's brought their soap. So do bring that stuff with you as well. Last one, you have your staying at home kit, you have your running away kit. I need you to build some social connections. We know that the number of social connections you have greatly predicts your resilience in a disaster. Get to know your neighbors. I'm not saying you have to like them, but get to know them and know their vulnerabilities and their capacities. And the evidence indicates that in a disaster, your reach is going to be about 200 or about 100 meters. So I'm talking about your block. So those are the folks to get to know. Now, talked about preparation a little bit, and I want to talk about response. So the bad thing has happened. Now what do you do? So and I'm going to talk about them by season because they vary. So talk about tornadoes. They're loud. They're really common. Tornadoes exist. There's 6 different sizes of tornadoes, from force 0 to force 5. And we have lots of little ones all over the prairies. We have very few big ones. Canada has had 1 force 5 tornado in recorded history. Climate change would indicate that we are going to have more. There's also there's some other wind events that we're going to see more of as our climate changes. Best thing with tornadoes is you can see them coming. Look out, say there is the tornado, here it is coming. So if you are at home, get low, get into the basement, get into a low-lying part of your house. If you're at work, get to the middle of the building and get low. If you're on the third floor and an interior stairwell or an interior room is going to get you away from the windows and the glass and the flying debris. If you are outside or on the road, I want you to get out of your vehicle and get low. Get into a ravine, get into a ditch, get somewhere below ground level. I need you to get out of your car because your car is relatively light and your car also cannot grab anything. You can grab, the car can't. And so the wind is going to come along and it's going to push the car and you're in the car and the car goes flying. You get out, you get into a ditch, you lie down so the wind, there's nothing for the wind to push on, and you hold on really tight and the wind is going to go over you and the debris is going to go over you. We used to tell people to get under bridges. Don't go under bridges. Get low. Bridges turn into chimneys, and as the wind blows past one side of the bridge, it pulls everything out from underneath the bridge. So no more bridges. Get low. If you can't get low, lie down. Just get flat as you can and hold on. Thunderstorms, loud, really common, very common. The hazards with the thunderstorm are the wind and the lightning and the acute flooding that comes from them. So first of all, in a thunderstorm, stay where you are. If you're at home, you're fine. Unplug any of your really valuable electronics and just stay where you are. If you're at work, unplug any really valuable electronics and stay where you are. If you're outside, if you're on the road, you need to get to shelter, particularly from the lightning, and then stay where you are. Lightning strikes in Canada hit predominantly golfers and hikers because those are folks who are outside. They tend to be in exposed areas or open areas. And so do the opposite of hiking. Go indoors. In a thunderstorm, the rain's pouring down, the lightning's coming. It's going to be tempting to get under a tree, take shelter from the rain. Do not take any shelter from the rain that makes you more at risk for lightning. So don't get under the trees. Sorry, you're going to get wet. Flooding, as I said earlier, this is Alberta's most serious disaster. If we talk about things in terms of cost, financial cost, flooding is the easiest to avoid. And the main threats with a flood come after the flood, and they are predominantly disease and infrastructure damage. So if you are at home and water is coming into your house, disinfect. So you've got that big bottle of bleach, pour it into the flood water. If it is safe to approach your electrical panel, if there's no water between you and the panel is dry, shut your power off and go. If you're at work, again, disinfect that water and get out. If you're outside, if you're on the road, stay out of the flood water. We have all seen the videos on YouTube of what happens if you attempt to drive through or walk through flood water. You're going to get stuck and you're going to get wet and you're going to get hurt. So stay out of the water. Fire, if you find yourself in a wildfire situation, usually very common in the early spring before things have greened up. So we still have the old dead grass, we have old dead grasslands, and fire comes through those, and the wind pushes it, and we get these grass fires. Or we get late summer, everything has greened up and then dried out, and then it comes along and pushes through again. Fire loves spruce trees. Fire loves old spruce trees, and of course, with our current climate situation, we have lots of those, and they're getting older. So again, watch for those crossover conditions. And if it is crossover conditions, then take those extreme fire safety behaviors. That's, we don't barbecue, we're very careful with our cigarette butts. We clean our exhaust on our quad before we drive through the field, all of those behaviors. If you are at home, and there's a wildfire, prepare to go, and go when you are directed. If you're at work, you're going to head for your rendezvous. And rendezvous is a real important thing. I talked about those out of province contacts. The rendezvous is a place where your family have agreed to meet if they can't leave together. So if I'm at work and my wife's at work and the kids are over here, we are all going to go meet at Uncle Peter's place. because that's the gathering point. If you are on the road, wildfire, and you get your travel is disrupted by a wildfire, again, always know how you are going to get out of the area and watch for the conditions. Stay alert. The cruel fact is that we go camping, we go to recreate in the great outdoors as a way to disconnect and stop paying attention to the troubles of life. You got to pay attention to some of them, and particularly if you're out and it's hot and dry, then every day you're going to need to know what those fire conditions are for the area where you are. As we all know, fires come earlier, they last later in our year now. So previous times where we didn't have to worry about fire, we now need to be fire aware. In the wintertime, winter storms, they come along. Worst case scenario, they're going to knock out the power, water, and heat to your house. That's how we lived on the prairies for thousands and thousands of years. So if you are prepared to live in your house with no power, water, and heat, then this is not a disaster. Batten down the hatches, stay where you are, keep warm. Your house is going to lose about 1 degree an hour in winter conditions, unheated. And so you've got probably close to a day before everything really starts to freeze. So get everybody in one room, get lots of blankets, get your book, and you're just going to camp in there. If you lose heat and water, I want you to turn off the water supply to your house. And I want you to turn a tap on in the basement, basement bathroom or down by the laundry machine. Turn the tap on and just drain all the pipes in your house of water so that there's no water in the pipes that can freeze. If you're at work, you're going to batten down and you're going to stay at work. You're going to eat your supply of stored food. You're going to drink all the coffee and you're going to be fine. If you're outside and on the road, this is kind of the most dangerous place to be in a winter storm. So I want you to route plan really carefully. I want you to share your route plan with somebody who loves you so that they know where to look if you don't show up where you're supposed to. And I want you to stay at your vehicle. If you get into trouble on the road, stay there. The vehicle will stay a little bit warm with you in it, and you've got a blanket in there. So stay at your vehicle. Stay on your route, stay at your vehicle so we can find you. We talked earlier, we said, how prepared are you? And 21% of you said not prepared at all. And 71% of you said a little bit prepared. But I'm going to tell you, you are actually slightly more prepared than you think you are, because you have more capacity than you have been told you have. You can do search and rescue. These folks here, this is the Cajun Navy. And the Cajun Navy got its start in Hurricane Katrina. They rolled up to New Orleans and they said, hey, we hear you need help doing search and rescue. And the folks said, no, we have search and rescue handled. We'll do it ourselves. It's fine. And so the Cajun Navy went down the road to the levee, put their boats in the water and did search and rescue anyway. And they've continued to do that in hurricanes ever since. So have a bit of an equipment inventory for yourself and for the neighbors that you know. Who's got a generator, who's got shovels, who's got a squeegee, who's got, the good snowblower, those kinds of things. You have skills, and this is Jabbar Gibson, and he is my favorite emergency manager ever. I always cry when I tell the story. So Jabbar Gibson was a young man in Hurricane Katrina, and he was a car thief. And that was his trade. And after Hurricane Katrina, he broke into the schoolyard where they were storing all of the school buses, and he stole one. And he filled it up with people at the Superdome, at the stadium there in New Orleans, and he drove it to Houston. And he was the first bus that made it out of New Orleans and made it to Houston. It was driven by Jabbar Gibson. So you have skills, and your neighbors have skills. Do you have nurses or doctors who live on the block? Do you have vets who live on the block? Do you have childcare experts? Those kinds of things. You have all these skills, and if you know your neighbors, you know who you can go and ask. You have first aid and medical assistance. Most of the first aid that is and medical assistance that is done in a disaster is done initially by neighbors, by people who responded. That again comes out of those relationships, right? Knowing who to ask for help. You have, this is out of the Calgary floods, and this was a group of folks in a neighborhood who got busy after the flood cleaning out garages. And they came in with shovels and buckets and pumps and wheelbarrows, and they just cleaned garages and they shoveled out the silt. And the city of Calgary came along and said, okay, this is great. We're going to help you establish not-for-profit, and we're going to get you all registered and insured and trained and everything. And the group said, nah, we're just going to keep cleaning garages. So you can create these ad hoc organizations, and you can support each other throughout the emergency and disaster. And for those first 72 hours, your ad hoc organization may be all that there is. You can also guide and support the emergency responders when they do get there. This is one of my favorite pictures. It's from New Brunswick. There's a road there. I don't know where it is. The Canadian government doesn't know where it is, but the neighbors will know where that road is. And so the responders may roll up and they may say, where's the road? Or they may say, who needs help? Right? And you can say, okay, there's Mrs. Murgatroyd and she's 87 and she needs help. And there's somebody over here we don't know, they're going to need some help. And you can guide those responders. It's that local knowledge, even local knowledge inside a city on your block is going to be very valuable. This is an outfit that I have done some work with. It's called we'reready.org, and we do workshops for communities, and we mean like your block, 100 meters, on how to be prepared. So if you're interested in that, you can go to we'reready.org and have a look at some of those workshops. We've done them in High River. We've done them here in Edmonton, and they help build on that community preparedness piece.
But I do encourage you to learn more. The city's Office of Emergency Management website is up to date with information and reiterates much of the information that Adam presented to us today. And if you would like to learn more about some of the changes that we might expect from a changing climate here in Edmonton, visit edmonton.ca/climate resilience. And of course, changeforclimate.ca provides a wealth of information and links to more resources. There are many ways to stay informed about the city's climate change work, so don't be shy to follow us. There are many ways that you can stay in touch. And thank you, Adam, again, so very much for sharing your time and your expertise with us. You've provided us with every good reason to ensure that we are fully prepared so that when an emergency arises, it's actually not an emergency at all. And thank you, Karen, my colleague, for handling all of the logistical pieces to make today happen. And our audience, I hope that we will see you again at an upcoming session. I hope everyone stays warm today and that you have a terrific afternoon. Thanks again.